Everyone to this South Huron Council meeting, February 3rd, 2025. And we welcome our staff who are here this evening and those in the gallery. And we also welcome those who are participating from home. And we'll ask everyone to please rise for Roll Canada, please. And again, welcome everyone, including our members of council that are here this evening. I see all members of council are here, and we will proceed to begin this meeting with our land acknowledgement. As we gather, we are reminded that the municipality of South Huron is situated on Treaty 29 land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. And as a community, we have a responsibility to honor and respect this territory's significance for the Indigenous peoples who lived and continue to live upon it and whose practices and spiritualities were tied to the land and continue to develop in relationship to the territory and its other inhabitants today. In the spirit of reconciliation and truth, we acknowledge the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Thank you for that. We'll move on to item number 2. Ms. Masuo-Carlson, please.
That South Huron Council approves the agenda as presented.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neave, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest under item 3. Are there any disclosures this time? Councillor Neave, go ahead, please.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Finch, through the chair. Item 17.2, the Ford Municipal Drain, actual costs. The reason being that the Ford Drain includes part of my parents' family farm. So when that item comes up, I'll be stepping out of the meeting.
Thank you for that. And you provide the proper documentation. Thank you for that. And very well, moving on to item number 4. We welcome Mark from GEI. Mark, welcome. Good. And you're ready to go whenever you are. Just push the microphone button. You're good to go.
Push the talk. Everyone can hear me okay? Small room. All right. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mark Zamwich. I am with GEI Consultants. I am here to present the South Huron Water and Wastewater Master Plan. I was here previously and presented some of the outcomes of this, so that's a little bit of some of the same content, but we're on the edge of finalizing the plan. So I'll have some similar slides as we've shown, but I'll walk through and hopefully answer any questions that you've got. Starting off with our presentation, so I do have some introductory slides and then followed by the actual program itself where we can look at some of the maps. But first, before we start, we'd like to always understand what is driving our water and wastewater master plan, and why do we do a master plan? And the first thing is really to ensure that we are managing our water and wastewater systems responsibly, continuing to update the needs, update the capital programs, and what do we need from a water and wastewater perspective. We always want to continue to coordinate with other ongoing programs, studies, such as development charges, aligning with our official plans and making sure that we are building water and wastewater infrastructure that aligns with everything else that is going on within the municipality. Additionally, we want to plan for build-out, so supporting development and growth in a responsible and efficient manner, and develop a capital program that is up to date, that reflects up-to-date costing, as well as the needs for development charges purposes for future growth. You can go to the next slide, please. Overall, the objectives of a master plan, there are several there, so I won't read through every single slide and all the details, but really we want to look at the growth impacts on the future servicing within the municipality, coordinate with the existing needs of the system, make sure that we can evaluate the upgrades that have already been planned. How can we meet existing needs plus future growth from a water and wastewater perspective in terms of the linear network, pumping, the facilities, the treatment capacity of both water and wastewater systems. We also want to develop the efficient strategies that have flexibility and economic efficiency. We want to build efficient strategies within the system that can be done in a cost-effective manner. Lastly, updating of the capital program. And as I'd mentioned in the previous slide, that and financial plan, that's a key element to any master plan, and that's a key objective. So we also want to know how much of the costs that we're recommending, how much of the projects that we're recommending are growth driven, how much are addressing existing known issues within the system. And so we can determine what that split is. So how much are paid for by growth or how much are paid for by rates. Go to our next slide, please. This master plan followed the MEA Class EA process and satisfies phases 1 and 2. And the graphic we're showing here outlines the environmental assessment process. And in simple terms, it really just means we're trying to develop the problem and opportunity statement. So what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to solve by developing this master plan? What solutions, what alternative solutions can we develop to solve that problem? We evaluate the alternative solutions, and then we select the preferred. So we have our problem, we determine what we need to solve it, and then we evaluate options, and then select our preferred strategies. So within those strategies, that's where we develop our capital plan. And in following the environmental assessment process, we are complying with the MEA Class EA process. Next slide, please. As part of that evaluating of alternative solutions, we need to determine what the evaluation methodology is. So that will be on the next slide, is our evaluation methodology process. Do we not have that? It's slow? That's okay. It'll be a nice surprise. I'll wait till we get there.
And we can see it on our screen.
Oh, you can
here.
see it there?
Yeah.
Oh,
we have it
okay,
on
sorry.
computers, yeah.
All right, sorry. So the evaluation methodology. So for master plans and for evaluating of options, we need to evaluate the trade-offs. Essentially, how do we score? How do we evaluate one alternative over another? We have to consider environmental factors, technical, financial, and social factors, and understanding that all engineering and all strategies are evaluation of trade-offs of one or the other. We have a lot of different options that are available to us, and we want to make sure that we are balancing those factors that are shown on the slide. So we need to be clear, we have the thorough rationale of the trade-offs, and we highlight the reasons why one alternative is preferred over another. So for this master plan where we had multiple options to evaluate, this would be the criteria scoring that we would have used. And we go to the next slide, please. Our public consultation. So this is a little bit of a timeline of where how we developed the master plan. So we started with the public consultation with the notice of commencement in October of 23. We had a PIC in April 2024. We presented to this council in October as well as today. And then we plan to have a 30-day public review with the full document coming up in 2025, in the spring of 2025. Now, before we get to the strategies, one of the main drivers, of course, for doing a master plan is planning for growth. So our table that is going to come up any second now talks about the future potential population that is identified within the different municipalities in South Huron. Now, of course, at the top bubble there, we're talking about growth uncertainty. So with every master plan, with every infrastructure plan, we need to account for the location of growth. So what infrastructure is needed and where does it need to go? The rate of growth, so when is it triggered? And then potential servicing of outside the existing settlement area boundaries. So there is always uncertainty with any growth plan or any growth projection, because growth can always change from month to month, year to year. We've seen that in the past for many municipalities, that we need to make sure our plans, our infrastructure plans, are flexible to account for some of that growth uncertainty. Now, the middle bubble here talks about the draft plans and concepts. So where available, we did use approved draft plans or developer input where we could, where there was information. And Other than that, we were using for remaining development lands and assumed density and units to project our future growth within the municipalities. We also planned to plan to focus on the build-out potential within the growth areas of the systems. Can go to our next slide. We're showing a few little maps here. Predominantly, we're seeing the red, which is residential growth, blue, which is some employment growth. So within the 4 different municipalities, Exeter, Credit, and Grand Bend, Huron Park, Centralia, we have our different pockets of growth that have been identified that require obviously new water and wastewater infrastructure in order to service. So our master plan, this is sort of the basis for where our master plan starts, as well as layering on some of the existing needs within the existing systems. All right. Okay, the water system. So we're trusting that the group is relatively familiar with both the water and the wastewater system. So I won't belabor and go through every single detail of the systems here, but essentially we have a supply system from Lake Huron at the Lake Huron primary water supply system that sends water easterly towards the 8 different pressure zones through a series of pumping stations and storage facilities. So there are elevated tanks in a reservoir, as well as 2 booster stations that delivers water all the way through the network, through the different municipalities. And we can see actually, before we skip the slide, we can see in this bottom corner there, it's really tough to see from the graphic, but we do have significant growth. So what we're showing here is under existing conditions, we're at 44.9 liters per second. When we add growth on, we're at about 100 liters per second of the demand throughout the system. So significant growth within the areas, so upgrades are going to be needed. And before we get into the individual strategies, what we like to do, and I won't walk through all of the bullets here and all of the call-out boxes, but we look at the water system opportunities and constraints. So when we look at the existing system itself, we layer on growth. We say, what are the issues? What are some of the opportunities that we have, and what are the constraints, or what are the issues in the system that we need to address? So for the most part, with the system in general, you have a relatively older system. It is aging, and when there's aging system, you have things like lower pressure. We have efficiencies to be gained by upgrades. There are also some resiliency. Overall resiliency, fire flow, and security of supply needs throughout that were identified in order to make sure we have a robust, resilient system that can withstand water main breaks or maintenance or shutdowns and things of that nature. Additionally, with the future growth, we've also identified storage needs within the system. So storage through reservoirs or elevated tanks, there's always a storage need that's there, and growth just exacerbates that. There are also slight pressure zone boundary constraints that were identified through some of the modeling and analysis. On the opportunity side, there is good capacity. So on the treatment side, there is enough treatment within the system to supply the bulk of the growth. So with that setting the stage for the opportunities and constraints, we can then develop our capital programs or our servicing strategies. So we can go to the next slide. And forgive me, there is a lot of text on this slide here, but really what this boils down to is what the capital program needs. I'm jumping to the preferred or the preferred water capital program throughout the systems. Generally, and we'll go through area by area, but generally consists of modifications to some of the pressure zones to get a better level of service, some resiliency upgrades. So as I was saying, security of supply, resiliency of your system, there are upgrades there. New storage infrastructure required, extension of servicing to support growth, so water main extensions into growth areas, and then additionally upgrades to the existing linear system that aligns with road reconstruction program. So that is in general what we were recommending throughout the systems, and then we can go through area by area with a little bit more detail along with the maps in the next slide, please. Starting with Exeter. So similarly, what we've done is we've layered on this growth map, which is aligning with the current official plan or the update to the official plan. So some of the blocks that we're seeing is where the previous growth was being shown. And in general, you can see where the lines are down in the existing roadways, where there's yellow and red and orange and green, corresponds with, on the legend, the capital program, where each of the different colors signifies what is triggering that water main upgrade, whether it's growth or fire flow needs or aging infrastructure that just needs to be replaced, or a combination of the above. So we have a network of water main replacements throughout the existing area, water main extensions to service growth. There are also booster pumping station upgrades to provide pressure and to supply some of the higher pressure zone, as well as a new elevated tank. So you have one current existing elevated tank, but the current plan, the current program is to replace that with a new one. That covers all of the upgrades within Exeter. So if we move next to Stephen. One moment. We've zoomed out a little bit, and you can see from this map that we are predominantly on the linear side. We're looking at resiliency upgrades, servicing growth, and improvement of level of service within some of the interconnections on some of the rural roads there. You can see the different colors. We've got yellow for aging infrastructure, blue for improvements. We've got green for growth, red for fire flow improvements. So the different shading and the different colors are the different triggers, and subsequently what they are intended to do and what they're intended to improve. Next is Huron Park, Centralia. It's a similar story there. The smaller municipalities, the smaller little towns. We've got a series of linear upgrades for helping to service existing users, improve level of service, as well as to service some of the smaller growth areas here. Next for Crediton, similar to the previous slide, we've got mostly the yellow colored pipes, which are really replacement of aging infrastructure, as well as red for the improvement to fire flow. That takes us through the water. So we do have all of the big long list of the projects. So all of the lines you would have seen on that map is documented in the master plan itself, line by line, project by project, with a length, a diameter, description, cost, etc. So the conclusion of the master plan, is the big list of projects. And what that does is that then sets the stage for next steps in terms of development charges, rates, etc. To the existing water system. So the wastewater system. The wastewater system is not interconnected like the water system is. It's divided up into two different areas. So we've got the Exeter wastewater treatment facility to the east, Grand Bend treatment facility to the west. Additionally, you've got your network of sanitary sewers, as well as sewage pumping stations that take the flow and pump it from low-lying areas across creeks through the different challenges of topography to the network. So won't go through every one piece by piece, but again, we're into the two areas, Exeter and Grand Bend. A similar story, we've got existing 36.8 liters per second for the Exeter with a growth of 62.8. So we do have significant growth between the two. On the opportunities and constraints side, it's a similar story as water, where your infrastructure is relatively old, aging, et cetera. And when you have that, you have existing I&I issues. So extraneous flow, wet weather events, rainwater can get into your systems, and that eats up some of your capacity, uses up some of the sewage system capacity with some of that aging infrastructure. But with an older system, it does give us opportunities for optimizing some of the sewage pumping station facilities. So relatively, South Huron does have quite a few sewage pumping stations, and what we're seeing is that as they age, as the sewer system ages, and you have new growth areas, there are opportunities now to bring some efficiencies there with some of the facilities, whether it's decommissioning a pump station or rebuilding or adding a force main or relocating a pump station that's not in an optimal spot. There are opportunities there. Some of the constraints as well are related to capacity. So unlike the water system, the wastewater system does need wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and we'll have those identified for both of the municipalities. Another opportunity here, one before we leave, is the opportunity to coordinate with water, roads, and wastewater. So you'll see, again, in Exeter predominantly, there are a series of the wastewater upgrades, all intended to be coordinated with the water and the roads as well. Next is our big list of capital program. All of the bullets really sums up to wastewater treatment plant upgrades, some new pumping stations, new sewage pumping stations at various locations, an I&I reduction program, which is intended to help relieve some capacity or regain some capacity within your systems, and then new linear upgrades, again, coordinated with the water, as well as extending into some of the new growth areas, especially. So you've got a new growth area on the outskirts of one of the municipalities. Sewers are required, extend out to service those, and that's relatively a straightforward upgrade. Moving on into Exeter. Similarly, we've got our growth areas around the perimeter of Exeter. A lot of the upgrades within the downtown core along the existing roadways. Again, in the legend, we're identifying what the trigger is for that upgrade, whether it's growth, improvement, aging, I&I, etc. But for the other infrastructure upgrades, we're talking about the treatment plant upgrades over at the northwest corner at the Exeter Wastewater Treatment Facility, linear upgrades throughout a new South Exeter wastewater pumping station just on the other side, or in a new location adjacent to the Snyder Crescent sewage pumping station, followed by decommissioning of the Snyder Crescent. So it's essentially a relocation into a better location, larger pump station at a better spot. Additionally, what we'll talk about at the end of the presentation as well is an I&I reduction program and flow monitoring program that's intended to get some of that rainwater out of the system, free up capacity throughout. Moving on to Grand Bend now is, again, another wastewater treatment facility upgrade, pumping station upgrades and some changes. So where you've got some existing stations, there's some opportunities to either decommission. So there's the Dark Horse, Oakwood, POG, and the what's the last one called? Oakwood Inn and Resort private pumping station. So there's several pump stations all with various ages and capacities and abilities. And what we're looking at is opportunities there to modify and to gain some efficiencies. Additionally, there's the Highway 21 sewer extension that is recommended as per the completed EA, extending along the 21 to service the growth in the red and the pink there along that road. Next slide is going to be Huron Park, Centralia, Crediton, all lumped into one. So there are several sewage pumping stations servicing the areas, opportunities for efficiencies. The two pumping stations share one of the force mains as you go to the north. There's opportunities there to have a pump and mechanical upgrades, force main upgrades, potential force main tunings, and various different upgrades there that can help service those areas. Additionally, I&I recommendations are made within Huron Park to help address some of those wet weather issues. And then finally, on our last slide, we talk about wet weather management. So I've talked about this in the past. Really, this slide is focused on wet weather management program and I&I. So a consistent theme throughout is that wet weather management. It's intended to reduce that rainwater getting into the sewers and to improve the level of service. Reduce the risk of sewer backups, reduce the risk of sewage overflows, and freeing up capacity for the pockets of growth that inevitably want to come and fill in within the existing systems. Additionally, it's meant to meet the MECP requirements that limits the amount of overflows that are allowed within the system. And really, it is a proactive program that helps you service growth, maintain existing levels of service, and really operate that system much more efficiently. That's really the summary of all of the bullets down the left side, essentially. But that really takes us to the end, and I apologize if I went through it quite quickly. I know that some of it, was circulated before, and the risk of going through every single project line by line. I wanted to make sure we captured it in general, and we have an opportunity now for any questions if you guys have them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Well
Yes.
well done. Great presentation.
Thank you.
And I like the common sense approach with, removing pumping stations and use the force of gravity
Where
to our
opportunity.
advantage, right? It only makes sense. And Mr. Guyverson has mentioned that many a time, so and he's got lots of experience in the industry. Are there any questions for Mark at this time? Councilor Oak.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Mark, for the presentation or summary of the plan. Just to start off, back in the Grand Bend area, there's a big area now considered future residential, where all of a sudden the Grand Bend area is going to be bigger than Exeter in the projections. Just wondering where that residential area came from or how that was developed, because we're not even talking about that in our official plan update that we're doing today. So just wondering that goes from all the way along Highway 21 to County Road 83 now is considered future residential. So just wondering where that discussion came from.
Mark, go ahead, please.
This to Mr. Mayor or to the chair? planning forecasts were developed in conjunction with the town. Now, I believe the official plan ends at the darker colored line as potential residential area, and then the future is the lighter pink. Is that correct? What you mean, the pink area? And for the final shapes that were reviewed for us, that was done in conjunction with the town. That was not a water wastewater master plan item. So the exact origin, I would need to actually defer to Mr. Giverson on that one.
Mr. Giverson, go ahead, please.
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. So that future growth area has a long history. The trunk sewer extension itself was a product of the environmental assessment that was carried out in 2012 that identified the need for the trunk sewer extension of Highway 21 to service areas in that vicinity. And the next time we saw a definitive area to contribute on the east side of Highway 21 was when we did an agreement with Lambton Shores on cost sharing for trunk sewer phase 1. So the trunk sewer from the main pump station in Grand PS2 up to Indian Road, which that work was done by GM Blue Plan, not Mark, but other engineers at GM Blue Plan. That particular design and that agreement has these same areas in them. So that future growth area of that size and that dimension came from that agreement with Lambton Shores. So the trunk sewer joint with Lambton Shores was designed for that future growth area, amongst other areas along 81 and in Lambton Shores. So the evolution of the master plan was to include those two previous elements. The EA, which determined the need for trunk sewer to service that corridor, and then the trunk sewer design, that agreement that we have with Lambton Shores, that's where this current map is directly taken from that appendices in that agreement.
Mr. Oak?
So yeah, just as a follow-up then, so that's fine. But then I'm just wondering why we're not talking about that in our official plan, because the official plan goes out 20 years or whatever, and what's the difference between this plan and an OP? And then my next question is if that does happen and this does build out, we don't have enough capacity at the Grand Bend sewage treatment plant for that whole to go to 6,000 people in Grand Bend. We don't have that, our share of the capacity there, in my mind. But
Mr. Giverson, response?
Through you, Mayor Finch. So the reason for the two colored areas and the alignment with the OP is the OP update has a 15-year window that they're looking at. And the sewer design is designed for a 100-year window. So you're looking at a much longer view because the OP will be revisited again every 5 years. But if you put pipes in the ground, we can't dig those up and replace something that's cost millions of dollars to put in the ground and make them bigger as the area continues to grow. So those pipes are designed for, it's a very long-term plan. Like they're designed to last 100 years. So that's the reason, the difference between what's identified with the OP. That's well beyond what they can predict with the OP. And they also, on the planning side, it will be revisited every 5 years, that if it's still valid or not, you're not getting the growth, or is the growth going more, and the limits of the settlement area would be adjusted accordingly. Now, the Grand Bend sewage treatment plant, in the text of the detail of the report, and if you're asking this question, you've read that section, So you see it's been identified. We have the roughly 35% of the capacity. We're currently using, I'm not even sure it's half of that capacity. And there are several mechanisms that are in our joint agreement. The first that would be exercised to get additional capacity for growth would be you would utilize any unused capacity. Within the agreement, there's so there's still significant capacity that's not being used, and there's not a lot of prospect that it's going to be used. Because we're talking about capacity that's been designed into the sewage treatment plant for properties along the lakeshore. I don't see much prospect of that connecting anytime soon. So there's a significant amount of unused capacity. It's all documented in the annual reports for the sewage plant, exactly what's been used and what's still available. So that would be the first to be used for any growth related like additional flows. In our joint agreement, we also have the capacity, or within that agreement, you can re-rate the sewage plant. That's already been done with PS2. With PS2, as initiated by Lambton Shores. So PS2 is the capacity is split 50-50. We have used very little of our 50%. Lambton Shores, we're getting close to the maximum amount. So there's a few more provisions in the agreement, but they chose to initiate a review of the pump station and you can do actual pump drawdown test. They hired an engineer, GM Blue Plan, did this analysis, sent the documentation to the ministry, and the pump station was re-rated without doing any physical work to the pump station at additional capacity. So our 50% also grew. There's another provision. This is a brilliant agreement with the joint agreement with Lambton Shores for that sewage plant. Because there's another provision that you can trade, you can sell, you can borrow any unused capacity. And we are in an extremely enviable position that this is like our relationship with our friends across the border. We have what they need. So we have lots of capacity in the main pump station. And that's every year there's an annual report from the Lambton Shore staff, present a report to the sewage board, which has all this documented on the available capacity in PS2 and the sewage treatment plant. So there's opportunities for us to either we can loan, we can purchase, we can trade, we can do all sorts of things. Pumping station capacity for sewage treatment capacity. And all these discussions have taken place with that staff level. And there's interest all the way around. That's strictly at the staff level with my counterparts at Lambton Shores. Ultimately, whether it's 20 years, 50 years, or 100 years, it's anybody's guess. My crystal ball isn't working too well on how quickly that area is going to grow. But you're talking a long time out there, and mechanical things wear out. Everybody who owns something mechanical, whatever it is, if it's a harvester, a tractor, or a truck, mechanical things in those sewage treatment plants only last so long. In our own asset management plan, it's a 15-year window for mechanical components. So eventually that plant is going to need equipment replaced, and there's first opportunity to do expansions. Last thing I want to say is that sewage plant is designed for plug and play. You couldn't ask for a better situation. South Huron and Lambton Shores are so well positioned with the design of that plant. It's a blessing for the future. The entire building is the ultimate, designed and constructed to the ultimate size for the sewage plant. which is double the capacity of what it currently has. It was purposely designed that way. So it's a pre-eng building. And then it has components inside, and some of these components are already pre-plumbed. So you have pipes, tank setups. If you walk through the plant, and I know many people on council have been on a tour of that plant, you can walk in and first comment that I've heard is, what's this extra space over here for? Look at the bank of filters, or look at the UV, and there's an extra bank. Where the alum tank is, there's an extra spot right beside it. Where the grit separators are, where you come into the, the front end of the plant, there's a mirror image on the other side available. So it's all been designed and built so that you can add additional equipment without having to expand the building. The clarifier tanks at the back of the building are specifically built and positioned, and I'm going like this because there's two round tanks at the back, and they're designed that you can construct two more behind it. It was all laid out, planned. I've never seen anything with such foresight to plan so easily for expansion. So it's all well positioned to do that. But this is a very long game with the trunk sewer, and that population projection of 6,000, that's a long time out there for all this to get built out. And the sewage plant will need things replaced long before that. So everything's been established and set up for the sewage plant to be fully expandable in the most affordable way possible. So if you can get additional capacity of a plant by hiring an engineer and doing a re-rating of the plant, that's extremely efficient way to get additional capacity. I think that's a sufficient answer.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Giverson. And that pipe that's in the ground that we put in 2020, I believe, to make the expansion, that's good for 100 years. Is that correct? And that was based on, I think that was cost of 1.6 million by the users that invested in that. Is that correct, from the reserves?
Answer to your first question is yes. It is designed for that length. The amount is, I don't know the amount off the top of my head, but it's in that ballpark. And it was paid both from user fees, and then there's a growth component that we will recover in the DC charges.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
Through you, Mayor Finch. Help me understand, probably Don, you're going to really want to answer this. You've referenced before that a lot of pipes in the ground are good for 100 years, but in the presentation that was just done, I'm just going to go for the Stephen, the Huron Park, Centralia, Crediton. It's showing that the pipes in the ground there are aging infrastructure, but they're only like 20 years old. So help me understand how that is aging infrastructure if it's good for 100 years, but they're only about 20 years old.
Mr. Giverson. Don, your microphone.
So let me go first, but Mark does know the answer to this one. And this is detailed in the master plan and in the previous master plan, and I believe one more back from there. There was a previous study conducted of the Stephen water system. So the Stephen water system probably best described as it was a budget build. So a lot of it was constructed by the MOE. A lot of it was constructed with no approvals. We have no drawings, no C of A's. Some there's no records at all. It's extremely low grade material. I have plenty of examples in my office. If you want to see them, I stopped collecting it because there's so much of it. But the basic short story is it was what they could afford at the time. So it's not designed to last 100 years, and it will, and it won't. In our asset management plan, it has a 60-year life cycle. Or it's for the thin wall PVC pipe. So in my office, I have lots of pipe it's white. A lot of it's white, some of it's gray, but it's a very, very thin wall. It fails quite easily. we have other components of the system that were the most affordable at the time. So it was what could, or what was affordable at the time that system went in. So when I do my math on when all that stuff happened, you're now approaching the end of its life. Because all this happened after the water plant was built in the 60s. So we have water mains from the 70s and the 80s that are all coming up to the end of the life. So we've been very active for, I'd say, at least 15 years replacing rural water mains for that reason, that there's a ton of it out there and we can only afford to do so much every year. We try to do maybe one concession, two if we can do it. But that's the difference. That pipe, because of the material, the design of it, and even the workmanship that was used at the time, it just will not get that kind of life. The contrast is in Exeter. Exeter PUC, they put the best quality material in. They spent a lot of money on water systems, and we're getting a much longer life out of Exeter, which I'll use Mark's explanation. There's opportunities that also come along with these challenges. So in Exeter, we don't have any disasters to try to fix with water mains. We can quite comfortably do an asset management program where the whole program in Exeter with replacing water mains and sewers is we follow the roads. So if let the roads, and we have no shortage of roads in poor condition. So they've been studied and they've been prioritized. And when roads are coming up that they're just totally beat, we then replace the water main and the sanitary sewer on those roads. But we have the luxury of doing that because of decisions made a generation ago to put that kind of quality material in Exeter. We don't have that luxury in Stephen Township because of how they built things and the way things were constructed. So that's the difference. Is we're just the rural water mains just won't last that long, and they're not either.
Thanks, Don. And Mark, did you have a comment? Follow up? Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure. Right. Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. There's two red line, page 10. Two red lines on there. And I don't see an explanation on what they are. Could you explain that, please?
Go ahead, Don.
I think I saw the same thing that's on King Street in Crediton.
No. Sorry. It's the ones back by from the Shipka connection to 81 Highway.
Oh, those two red lines. Okay. So sorry, through you, Mayor Finch. Mark has got a very good explanation for this. But these two red lines, obviously there's no water main in either one of those locations. So this is presented as a plan to get an emergency backup from the zone that's closest to the lakeshore zone. And what's driving this, and we completely realize, I drive those roads all the time. I know there's no opportunities for anybody to connect to either one of these, but these two were analyzed as the possible ways of getting a connection from the zone, I'll call it the Shipka zone, over to the lakeshore zone, because we do not have a good backup for the lakeshore area. And the changes that we made with the so the backup is if the water treatment plant goes down, which Alyssa's here, so we just got notification. I think another one's happening Thursday, Friday. Twice this week. So whenever the water treatment plant goes offline, we're constantly faced with this problem of trying to backfeed everybody. And some of the things in the master plan are to assist with the backfeeding. So we can quite comfortably backfeed from the Huron Park water tower back out, and we can bypass the booster station in Crediton and keep on going out, heading west. But our difficulty is getting all the way to the lakeshore. So in some shutdowns, we've been faced with bringing water tanker trucks in. The last time the Aqua guys did work at one of the chambers at Gore Road and Beeline, Alyssa's group had to bring in water tanker trucks to sustain that outage while they were doing that work. And that was a planned replacement of a piece of infrastructure. So if that's an emergency outage, tanker trucks just won't cut it. So we always face the risk of if we don't have a piped connection between those two pressure zones that can backfeed it, then you're either out of water along the lakeshore, or we go to our another line of defense. We can backfeed from the Lambton Shores system. But this idea of, and the South Road one is the least expensive option here, of getting an emergency feed across. So we can sustain for a lot longer than any of our neighbors if there's an outage. But that's the purpose of this, is emergency backup feed for the lakeshore pressure zone when the water treatment plant is taken offline, or if there's some type of emergency failure, then we have a way of backfeeding that area.
Okay, thank you, Don. Any other questions, Councillor Oak?
So just on that point, then, is there a possibility, I know that there's two connections on North Middlesex, the boundary there. We can't backfeed from that North Middlesex connection today?
Mr. Giverson?
So the only one that there's two connections, one at Eagleson Line, which is a dead end. So that's not going to help. Sorry, through you, Mayor Finch. So the connection at Greenway Road and Eagleson Line won't help us. The one at Greenway is a feed, but unfortunately North Middlesex goes out of water long before we do. So it'll help in short term if you had like a water main break along Grand Bend Line that you needed a quick switch around, but it won't do anything in a longer outage because they will go out before we do. The other thing, it's only a small connection, so it's 100 millimeter the whole distance, and I don't know how far into North Middlesex it goes at small pipe. So it's all small pipe for a very long distance, and it's not going to provide us with much water. But the biggest challenge is North Middlesex. They don't have the storage. What usually happens when there's an outage is North Middlesex comes to us, and they want the connection at Bronson Line in Mount Carmel. They ask for it to be opened because they can't sustain on their side. So it is a connection, but it's very little value to us other than something's just isolated in that kind of that Village of Greenway area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Neeb, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, Mark, through the chair. Just more of a general question, but in regards to our infrastructure, South Huron in a good place for development into the future. And I realize that's a big question to tackle, but it's something I know that's on a lot of people's minds, especially with housing needs and everything. So,
Go ahead, Mark.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to clarify the question, is South Huron in a good place for development in terms of infrastructure?
Yep, I think so, yeah.
I'd say, in my opinion, I'd say yes. Every municipality has its challenges, and every municipality, in order to meet growth, keep up with the housing pledges, there's lots of money, lots of dollars being spent, further and further away from treatment facilities, lots of expansion areas, but in general, it is, it is in the same ballpark as many other municipalities of the same size, in my opinion, as from what I could tell. You still have existing needs like everywhere else. You still have development charges needs for like everywhere else as well. So growth does need to support that the funding of this with the DCs, but I don't see it as being much different.
Thank you. Somebody else have a question? Oh, Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for the presentation, Mark. Okay, we were talking earlier in the evening about official plans, how long they're good for, and when they get revisited or should be revisited. This particular water and wastewater master plan update, how often do we revisit this?
So, Mr. Mayor, typical target or a goal for municipalities is to have their water and wastewater master plan updated every 5 years. So usually 5 years is a target to have it updated. That is not some go much longer, some do it fairly quickly and fairly regularly. It does depend on how quickly changing your planning needs are, how fast some infrastructure comes in. If development has some major changes and major official plan changes, then you may want to update it. But it really is just so at the very beginning, we were talking about what's driving it. If you want to be if you want to be on top of major changes and make sure that you're having up-to-date strategies, then you could do it more often, but typically it's 5 years. Every 5 years, yeah.
Okay, and just building upon that, so it's every 5 years that you take a look at it, ideally. And so how long are they typically meant to project out into?
That can vary as well. It sometimes depends on the population and employment projection target. So usually that historically that has come from the province where they have 2031 used to be a 2031 target when a series of master plans was being done. The Places to Grow growth plan, I think, was 2006 when it first came out, and that projected to 31. Population or provincial population employment targets now are given, I think the last round was out to 2051. So in general, you can't see the future that well. And as you go further and further out, there's a little bit less certainty. But some of the ones we are working on now are 2051 target with provision for potential post period or post 51. So that's, now we're in 2025. So, 20 to 30 years is sort of the short answer, I guess.
Okay, so 20 to 30 years, not 100.
Well, 20 to 30, sorry, I'll clarify that. 20 to 30 years is where you have population and employment projections too, with some level of a general level of certainty. That's not where we end though. Municipalities like Halton or Peel, for example, that we're working on now, they have projections to 51, but there's always a consideration for what areas could grow beyond those timeframes. And it's anybody's guess when you go beyond that. So it is your planning infrastructure in major strategies, certainly to go beyond that. So if you're doing big treatment plant expansions, buying land, big pipes, big water mains, facilities, you're always trying to think about what could be beyond that 51 or what's beyond the 30 years for the exact reason that Mr. Guyberson mentioned, that you don't want to build it twice, especially large infrastructure, large expensive infrastructure. You don't want to go back doing it twice.
No, I understand that argument.
Sure.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. May I ask another? Yes. All right. Fine. Okay. Just jumping ship a bit here. So earlier in the presentation and in the master plan, it talks about the water tower in Exeter, and that there's thinking about decommissioning what we have and moving it to the more northeast end of the town of Exeter. And so I'm just wondering if you might share with us what the thinking is on that. It's an expensive proposition. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yep. Thanks. I believe it's a capacity issue at the tower. The existing tower is a certain size, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I want to just check with Mr. Guyberson that it's a capacity issue. There is an older tank And these older tanks do require ongoing maintenance, but there's an efficiency to move it.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So the concept of the new Exeter water tower at the highest point of land in the northeast came out of the mind of Julian Bell. I give him full credit. He's the engineer who from GM Blue Plan who did majority of the kind of the growth related concepts that you see in the master plan. So not only that concept, but the sewage plant expansion concepts is the other big, probably the most expensive thing that's in the master plan is replacing the Exeter sewage lagoon with a mechanical plant at a $20 million cost. So the rationale for new water tower in that location is it is a combination of we have an older tower that we're spending money on to maintain it and keep it going and keep it from rusting, and it still is in service, but it's only so tall. It only has a certain height. And the way water towers work, they work off of head pressure. So it's a tower with a tank sitting up at the top, and that height of water will establish like how much the height above ground will establish how much water pressure there is at ground level. So as the natural topography of the area starts rising, which as you go out Huron Street, anybody who lives along Huron Street getting out towards Morrison Lake can attest to they're right at the limit of what this tower can deliver just because of the height. The land starts going up and it starts getting closer and closer to the height of the water tower. And there's a certain distance that you kind of max out maintaining pressure for that house. As you go out Thames Road, same problem, which is why when we connected to Lake Huron water, we split the system in Exeter. So everything north of the river has a direct pressure connection off the Exeter Hensel pipeline. So down Thames Road, there's a separate feed, our secondary feed for Exeter, which is the backup emergency supply. So we have dual supplies for Exeter, but it also creates a separate pressure zone because there were pressure problems. Because the water tower was just at its limit of what it could produce. Changing that and creating that second pressure zone facilitated a lot of businesses along Thames Road being able to have full fire protection. And if you listen to, there's one very vocal owner of a industry on Thames Road, almost at the top of the hill, who every time I've talked to him, he keeps mentioning the size of the tank he had to build underneath his factory so he could have fire protection. Well, that all went away when we built that second feed in and created a second pressure zone. Other businesses out there, the same. The greenhouse was turned down numerous times by the town of Exeter, the Exeter PUC, that they could not supply water, both quantity, but you couldn't get sufficient pressure from the town system to get water out there. So as Exeter grows, and this is the coordination of the master plan with the OP update, that the OP update, the expansion of the settlement area, the only expansion that's of the settlement area in Exeter is that way, is east. There are no other changes to the boundaries of the settlement area. It's that way. So technically, as you continue to grow to the east, that's the highest point of land. This water tower can't do it because it's not tall enough. So right now we can get a little bit of growth out to the east that's shown in the OP update. That's about the limit of what the water tower can do. But as you continue to grow to the east, the tower is not tall enough to do it. So that's the concept of eventually Our water tower in town, which Alyssa's going to help me, but I think it's a 1969 vintage. But you run out of how many times you could patch it and repair it and recoat it. And even though it's painfully expensive, because we spent $1 million to recoat the inside of the tank, eventually you just can't do it anymore. So we're going to hedge our bets here with planning a new water tower that's driven by growth, but try to get as much out of what we already own. Try to, keep maintaining it so it's not going to fail on us. But eventually the day is going to come where it needs to be replaced. And when you do replace it, put it in the right place. It's going to help the community continue to grow well beyond, when that tower is done service. The sewage treatment plant, I might as well address that now as well, because it's very, very similar concept and approach. Our existing sewage treatment plant, we are only at about half the capacity of the plant, very consistent. But it also has issues. We're rehabilitating 2 of the sand filters this year, and there'll be 2 more next year. And they're big, sprawling things that they're challenging to maintain. Because we're using it as the final portion of the treatment process, and they're commonly referred to as the spray fields. They have tons of nitrates that go on them. Everybody who farms knows what happens when you put nitrates on soil. It grows like crazy. So the growth on the filter beds impact the ability for them to filter. We've had them reviewed and analyzed. We've had the material tested, and we've been advised that you can only rehab them so many times. You only get so many kicks at the cat here. So we're rehabbing them now to restore their capabilities, but we'll reach another point where you might get one more time where you can rehab them. I scrape the stuff off the top, replace the medium at the top, leave everything else that's there, and try to stretch the life of that facility as much as possible. The UV is another thing you'll see in the 10-year forecast. It is also designed to deal with effluent quality issues, but to continue to use that facility and get as much of the capacity that it was designed for as long as you can. There's another couple other projects that are in the 10-year forecast and are in the master plan, but the concept is use what you have for as long as you can, hold off for as long as possible, but at least plan for there's something at the end when all this stuff is worn out, can't be rebuilt or patched or rehabilitated again, and then you combine that with growth for the community long term. So it's kind of a combination of both. In the master plan, it does say, and you can find it in the document, it says both of those pieces of infrastructure, one's 8 million something, the sewage plant's 20 million. They're big, expensive items, and they're in the master plan out 15 years. So it brings it into the planning horizon, so we can at least plan for them when they're going to come at us. But the hope and desire is to keep maintaining and using what we have and keep those things out as far as we can. So when this master plan is reviewed every 5 years, this will be constantly viewed. Is it still looming out there, or is it going to be coming at us quicker? So it allows to plan for the future for both dealing with our own existing infrastructure and for growth.
Thanks, Don. And in 1969, there was probably no development in the north end anyways, and they built what they needed at the time. So now we have all the development. So would be an argument also that would drive be an economic driver to have a newer facility out there in the few years. Any other questions, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Mayor. So the Snyder Crescent pumping station. Is the recommendation looks like down the road is to construct a new South Exeter one. I guess the question is, it looks like it's 100 feet apart. You know, why can't we just expand Snyder Crescent as opposed to building a whole new pumping station 100 feet away?
Mr. Garbers?
Through you, Mayor Finch. Yeah, that's an astute observation because we went through the same process. It is the least expensive way to upgrade and expand a pump station in its same location, if you can do it. That pump station was built as part of a development of a subdivision, and there isn't land there to do it. It's one of those forward-thinking things that they never left enough land. So there's no room to put, like you have to keep that pump station operational. Well, so if you expand it to something bigger to allow for growth, you have to keep what's going or what's there operational, and you need another spot to put a bigger, deeper wet well and another mechanical building. There isn't room there. So the next logical thing would be try to build, like acquire land beside it and try to just keep all that infrastructure and expand over. But with every challenge, there's an opportunity. And the developer who owns the land just on the other side of I call it the Ann Street drain, but it has a different municipal drain name. But where that drain goes across from on the north side of the Snyder Crescent pumping station, that developer also is required to put a pump station in. He can't get to the Snyder Crescent pumping station, and it isn't big enough for that land. So just on the north side of the drain, all his land slopes from the north to the south. So he's required to put a pump station in. There's been previous discussions with him and his engineer about like preliminary servicing concepts. And we have discussed strictly at a staff level and all preliminary that to service his land, would there be interest in doing something joint? That's a win-win where he's required to build a pump station. You make it bigger. We get our pump station upgraded and expanded at the same time. And eventually the pump stations, everything in them, everything mechanical wears out in 15 years. So it's a bit of a chess game to kind of coordinate this, but it gives you a roadmap to get there. Things wear out and you have to make decisions on, do we just replace same for same and keep it going and keep it functional? Or can it be made bigger to allow growth? Or here's a great opportunity. There's a developer owns that big strip of land on the west side of the railroad tracks from Wellington down to the Ann Street drain. He needs a pump station to service it. And that pump station is at the southwest end of his property. So this is how the concept was then out of the mind of Julian Bell. I'll give him all the credit in the world here. He listened to these different challenges and different things and said, here's a solution for you. Do something together with that developer. And he gets what he wants, we get what we want, and then there's enough expansion to allow for all the growth and development that we're looking at in that whole kind of southwest corner of Exeter.
So again, perhaps that was a visionary issue back in the day. If they just had a little bit more land allotted to the pumping station, we could develop in the same spot. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
So visionary. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Vaughan?
Yes, thank you. So in the Exeter area, we have a number of potential residential areas that are in red. And so we've just heard about a couple of challenges with the Snyder pumping station and looking to some future developer to make a deal with. And we've also been looking at a new water tower in the northeast end. So, which will facilitate eastern movement off into settlement areas. And so when I'm looking at this map of Exeter and I'm looking at the potential residential areas, are there earmarked settlement areas that we simply cannot expand into without certain of these upgrades happening?
Mr. Garberson?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Finch. I'm going to use the map because it'll help me to answer that question. So the new water tower is for growth beyond what you see on these maps. So it's growth that is east of what is on these maps for identifying growth that's aligned with the official plan. So it's further to the east. So this land that's in the draft OP update can be serviced with the existing infrastructure. This piece right here. The water tower is required for future growth beyond that heading east. The Snyder Crescent pumping station is what's required it's the Andrika land. So if if that developer doesn't proceed, then the pump station isn't needed and you don't proceed with that. The other land, which is it's identified in the master plan, it's the land in the southeast corner of Exeter. It's the McBride land. It's constrained by this bottleneck in the trunk sewer. So that's been in the official plan for several iterations of the official plan. The settlement area has been out there for long before this current update. So it cannot develop until that bottleneck in the trunk sewer. So I've explained this before that in 2004, there was the trunk sewer built in London Road South. They built the upper end of it and connected it to a local sewer at Mary and Waterloo Street. And then it goes through small pipes as it goes down Mary to Huron to Snyder to the Snyder Crescent pumping station. So the downstream piece is like a straw. So you get a big pipe going down London Road and across the McBride field and goes up to that point, Mary and Waterloo Street, where it connects on to a small one. Off the top of my head, I think it's 10-inch, might be 8-inch, but it's in that size range. So you can only push so much sewage through that pipe. There's already been development at the south end, subdivision and car dealership and a couple other developments. You're pretty much used up whatever you can get through that pipe. Long-term care facility on Snyder also. So that is the constraint for that piece of land. So the water tower, mechanical sewage treatment plant are growth-related projects that are beyond what you see on this map. So they're a longer-term vision, but they're in the master plan for both reasons. So as you continue, because they're big ticket items, it allows for longer-term planning, but also as your existing infrastructure wears out, needs replacement, you can coordinate that plan with something that's going to also give you the growth. So what's on the Exeter map, everything that's highlighted here, except for the Andrika land, all these other parcels can all be serviced with existing infrastructure. So you got the the Andrika land north of the N Street drain, west of the Goderich-Exeter Railroad between Wellington and Ann Street drain. That needs a pump station in order for it to develop, but that's at the developer's expense. That's where it's our opportunity if we wanted to partner with him. The McBride land in the across from HMP behind the Toyota dealership at the southwest corner, that cannot develop. It's constrained by this bottleneck in the trunk sewer. That gives you a picture of what you see on here. That's what can develop and what cannot develop.
Thank you, Councillor Oak, and then back to Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, so just one comment on that. I thought I read where the Hamath or McBride land to the east here that's showing up here, that the water pressure is too low to service that property. I thought I read that in the master plan here, that was one of the issues. Because I know when we ran the line out Huron Street, we had to take the hydrant out of the by the township shed because the pressure wasn't going to be high enough. We downsized the line. And now I see we put the hydrant back in. And I don't know what's changed as far as the pressure and the line size stayed the same. So I just thought I read here that property was that we're going to, before that maybe could expand, we would need the water tower because the pressure is too low.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Finch, there's a few questions in there. Let me address the growth and expansion in the water tower. So the water tower is required to do growth and development beyond what you see on this map. So that area that's identified in we'll call it the orange color, which aligns with, well, it's currently within the settlement area. So it is already designated for growth, and it can be serviced without the new water tower. But as you continue to go, Hamath or McBride land goes, they own most of the whole east end from the golf course out to Morrison Line and all the way wrapping around. So in the master plan, off the top of my head, as I can picture that page, there's a graphic which shows as you continue southeast, the elevation of the ground gets higher and higher. That's owned by Gerald McBride. You need the new water tower in order to service that. What's on London Road South, those properties directly behind HMP can be serviced with there's a 12-inch water main that runs down London Road. So there's adequate water pressure for that. So I think that is the distinction, is as you continue to develop beyond our current limits of the settlement boundaries heading east, you need the water tower in that higher location. The works yard, in answer to that question, yes, we did reinstall the hydrant because that water main is downsized. That is all linked together with the abandonment of the old wells and water quality issues. And so we had to replace all those lines with smaller lines because we were pumping water from the wells into Exeter before 2008. And then we went on lake water and we were sending water back out, and the lines were too big and they were old and crappy and they couldn't maintain a chlorine residual. So the lines were replaced with smaller lines. So it will not deliver fire flow. Still the case. Nothing has changed. The only request we had was a hydrant is better than no hydrant. So the fire department realizes you cannot get fire flow out of that hydrant, but you can at least fill a tanker, which are any type of reservoir that you can then use to fight a fire. But you cannot fight the fire directly from that hydrant. It will not do it. So that was the request, is to get something there as it's better than nothing.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, Councillor Vaughn, do you have something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have more questions, and I probably could go on with a number of questions because this is a huge document. And it feeds a lot of things that are all kind of coming together here at council. It feeds the official plan. It definitely is a move on this budget that we're working on now and beyond. It's going to have a role in our development charges study going forward. And of course, all of these things, and wouldn't it be wonderful to have everything that's outlined in here, is going to cost money, and that's going to feed the water and wastewater fee study that we've got coming up yet. So I realize that we have right now the consultant with us who's put together the plan, and that's great, but I'm just wondering where we're going to take this going forward. We are receiving the report tonight, but um, I don't know that in our motion we have actually adopted this plan. And I'm wanting to know, sort of going forward, what are the next steps? Like, do we have an opportunity to continue to ask questions about this before we start embarking down decision-making on things like the official plan, on the development charges study, on the water and wastewater fee schedule? So I'm wondering from a staff perspective, what plans there might be, and if council has to have a discussion around that for what we are doing next.
Thank you. And it is for, just to receive this report, this presentation, Mr. Sewell Collison, comment.
Through the mayor, we could do a couple of different options, depending on the length or the number of questions and how much council discussion is wanted. We could have a report come back, staff report come back, to the next meeting in February. That would be the 18th, with the option to adopt. Or the other option that we had discussed internally was to have a special meeting set for February 24th. It's a Monday. That gives a few more weeks, and then just have the topic be the water and wastewater master plan, and then council could ask questions, and we would supply the information and go for next steps.
And in the interest of time, maybe that might be the option to take, Councillor Oak.
So tonight it's just receiving the presentation. It's not even receiving the report. It's just the presentation tonight, right? The way the minutes.
Well, it's the presentation at this point. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so in the interest of time, perhaps we can move forward unless somebody else has another issue and have a staff report come back. Everybody agreeable to that? Mr. Sewell Collison?
Well, we have we could do the receives the presentation, and then we could amend this to and have a further discussion and set a special meeting for Monday, February the 24th, to discuss the water wastewater master plan.
Councillor Oak, or need?
Thank you through the chair. And just for clarity, just so that, I mean, I like meeting with all of you just as much as the next person, but just wondering what kind of recommendation would be coming out of that special council meeting, whether it would be to adopt the water and wastewater master plan.
Through the mayor. Yes, it would have to, we would need an adoption at some point in order to base all the other plans that Councillor Vaughn mentioned on this water wastewater plan. It will need to be adopted at some point, yes.
Okay, so Councillor Oak?
Yeah, and there might be some questions that come out on the 24th that can't be answered that night, depending whether it's adopted or recommended to go to council for an adoption or after that, or it might even be, could we adopt it that night as a special meeting? It's still a special council meeting. So if all the questions were answered and no further follow-up, I guess we could adopt it that night.
Okay, so we have no mover or seconder at this time, so do you want to make a recommendation from the staff as to how we'd like to present this recommendation, please?
And just to clarify, rather than a report to the next council meeting, there seems to be like a consensus that its own special meeting on the 24th. Okay.
Madam Clerk, you, when you're ready, could read that recommendation, please.
The South Huron Council receives the presentation regarding the water and wastewater master plan as presented by Marcus Amjol. Sorry. of GEI Consultants Limited, and that a special council meeting be set for Monday, February 24th, 2025 at 4 p.m. for further discussion on the water and wastewater master plan.
And the mover, please, Counselor Neeb, second by Counselor McLeod Haggett. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries a 7. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Counselor Vaughn, you have something?
Yeah, this isn't a really deep question, but I would like to ask it. On the very cover page, it says volume 1. And so does that mean there's a volume 2 to this?
Took my joke. I believe there's more volumes. I'm not sure how many volumes. How many volumes? How many more volumes? Just the only one.
I'll help Mark out there. It was labeled volume 1 because it's like the lead in to the 2 other sections that are specific to. There's one for wastewater and one for wastewater. So there's no other volume. It was the first in the set of the 3. So you have everything.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so there's nothing further. Madam Clerk, anything further on that? So we'll go to item number 5. There's no delegations, or 6 public meetings, 7 minutes. And we'll turn to Ms. Masood Paul, please. Thank you very much, Mark. Well done.
That South Huron Council adopts the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 13th, 2025 as printed and circulated.
And the mover, please. Moved by Counselor Neeb, second by Counselor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Carries with 7. Thank you. 8, please.
That the minutes, agenda packages, and correspondence of the following committees and or boards be received as presented to council. The Exeter Business Improvement Area minutes of November 28th, 2024. Grand Bend Area Joint Sewage Board minutes of December 12th, 2024. Huron OPP Detachment Board meeting minutes of December 17th, 2024, and OPP report. Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors draft minutes of November 24th, 2024, and agenda package of January 28th, 2025. Hearing committee draft minutes of November 24th, 2024, and agenda package of January 28th, 2025.
And the mover, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Counselor Neeb. Any discussion? Counselor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm not exactly sure who to direct this to, but I'll just put it out there. In the OPP Detachment Board meeting, and also saw it in the operational notes lately too, there is a comment that South Huron has agreed to take on the administrative role for the OPP Detachment meeting. And so it includes payroll, used to be administered by Central Huron, not anymore. We've taken that on. And I have noticed that we have a good number of staff, like Rebecca, Alex, and Stacy, showing up to meetings so far. And I'm just kind of wondering, this is a Huron County board, but seems to me like we got more people involved from South Huron than we ever had when we had a South Huron board. So can somebody please explain to me what's going on?
Through the mayor, I can start with it. Alex and I went to the first meeting just to get an overview of it. We do have one staff member that is supporting this, as well as in the budget, there's an administration fee. And the whole budget for the board is split between all the municipalities. So South Huron does get an administration fee for the work done by staff on the board.
Okay, so we do get some reimbursement, and we're expecting only one of our staff to really be vigorously involved in this committee.
That is correct. And it's about, I think this year there might be 5 or 6 meetings, but normally it would be 4 meetings a year.
Okay, and is there a term limit on that? Is this a forever thing, or once a year it's re-looked at, just as chairs are re-looked at, or how does that work?
Through the mayor, at this point, there hasn't been any further discussion on that. Central Huron did it for the first year as it was being created. The actual first meeting was in the fall of last year. So this is the first, well, this will be the first full year. I would expect the board is appointed per term of council. So it would likely be revisited at that point. Yeah, and that could be a suggestion from our end. I don't believe that the terms of reference at this point does have a term for the administration.
I don't think it did. I don't think there was any mention of it. And so my suggestion would be that just as with official positions having a term limit, our administration probably should as well. So I don't know who exactly will take that away and back to the board, but that's
Through
my
the
2
mayor,
cents worth.
I can take that back and talk to the board.
That sound good to you, Jim?
Yes, and this may not be a municipal, as we go down the road, the board could hire their own admin. So this is not something that's struck in stone. It's something that we had to do to move forward. So that's what's happening now. And I'm not so sure. I think it's probably going to be the term of council unless South Huron decides to pull the admin out. So I think that's the way it's going to be left for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. 8.5, please.
The South Huron Council receives the Centralia Community Park Advisory Committee draft minutes of January 21st, 2025, and that South Huron Council approves the recommendations of the Centralia Community Park Advisory Committee as follows. Accessible pathway to the playground pavilion to be reviewed by the Huron County Accessibility Advisory Committee. 2, accessible swing, and 3, accessible picnic table. And that water hookup for the Centralia Community Dog Park be prioritized in future budget discussions. And that council confirms the Centralia Park Advisory Committee has met its mandate as set out in its terms of reference.
A mover, please. Moved by Councillor Dietrich, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Councillor Oak?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just wondering, there's a lot of stuff here to do yet. Is there enough budget for this? I noted there was something about a community donor. Between the community donor and the budget that's still remaining, is there enough there to cover everything?
Through the mayor, yes. Yes, there is enough budget. We have been advised that whatever's not covered by the budget will be covered by the community donor for the project. That does not include the water hookup because that's a future consideration for budget. But as far as the 3 items there, yes.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Oak, you had something further?
I guess, yeah, I guess we'll wait until budget discussions on the water hookup because I have some comments on that. But we'll wait for budget discussions if that comes forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments then? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? Carries with 7. Thank you. 8.6, please.
That South Huron Council receives the Community and Volunteer Appreciation Committee draft minutes of January 23rd, 2025, and the South Huron Council approves the recommendations of the Community and Volunteer Appreciation Committee as follows. That the rental fee for the South Huron Recreation Center be waived for the volunteer recognition event on April 23rd, 2025, hosted by West Coast Active Living if a charity status is not obtained prior to April 23rd, 2025. And that an invitation be extended for the volunteer recognition event to 74 municipal volunteers, committee members, and volunteer firefighters, with South Huron sponsoring the recommended $15 per attendee, up to a maximum of total of sponsorship of $1,110, and that the volunteer appreciation event be promoted across all municipal communication channels.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor McLeod Haggett, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Councillor Oak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wondering, the list of volunteers, where the list came from, it doesn't say that they are committee of council volunteers. Just wondering if the Kirkton Pool and Community Center volunteers are included in this list. Even though Per South is the administrating body, there's still volunteers in South Huron with our facility in South Huron at this point in time. So just wonder.
Through the mayor, to my knowledge, I don't believe that they were included in this list. Now that would be approximately, I'm gonna guess about maybe 10 additional volunteers, so that would be 84.
Okay, Councillor Vaughn, did you have a question? Go ahead, please.
I did. It was sort of an add-on to what Councillor Oak was talking about. It does mention 21 members from committees. Now we know about Kirkton, Woodham, but so how do we know if all of our various committee members are included in that? So like my Dashwood committees and so forth. How do we know?
Through the mayor, we looked at the procedure or the appointment bylaw and took the names off of that and all of the committee members that have been appointed. So with the extra, let's say approximately 10, I think we're looking at $1,260 maximum.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vaughn.
Okay, and so carrying on from that, so take as another example, the Centralia Committee, which had volunteers, and now it doesn't look like they really have a committee kind of going forward. Are they included like they were?
Through the mayor, they are included. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And if it's an annual one, we're probably, I'm going to base it on what we had last year. Like the committee we had last year, like in 2024.
Okay. And also, counselors aren't included in that number. But I can say that I would probably want to go. So would that be something I would just expense? Or should we just pay for it all as a council unit?
Anybody have a comment? $15, I think is what it costs, right? That's, and we're asking volunteers, like, I think we, personally, I think we just, if we're gonna go, we pay our own, right? Sorry. So whatever people decide, it's up to them, but any comments at all? Looking around. Deputy, you have a comment?
No, if I was going, I'd pay from home. I don't have an issue with that. But I do have another comment, if I may. Rodeo. There's volunteers on there. We have a different situation because we have volunteers. There's 7 members that voting volunteers, and then there's about 6 other members that are just volunteers that don't get to vote. So how are they classified? Are they classified as volunteers, or where do we go with that? I guess it's kind of, I think it's fair that all volunteers, if that's what you're going to do, they need to be invited.
Perhaps then council could give an upset limit and allow staff a bit of time to figure out all the volunteers and maybe do an upset limit of maybe $2,000. Not that we're going to need it all, but let's do a more fulsome, if that works.
Deputy comment?
Thank you. I think that's a good idea because I don't want to be leaving volunteers out because we can't afford to pay them. So this $2,000 to me is a pretty cheap way of saying thank you for what they do, and they do a lot.
Councillor Oak?
Are those, just as a question, thank you, Mayor, are those volunteers listed in our appointment bylaw? Just for coverage for insurance reasons, if they're volunteering at the event?
Through the mayor, once that we have the names, when the event goes on, we get all the names and they're listed and they are insured. But for the whole preparation pieces, there's subcommittees with different people in the rodeo that wouldn't have been listed on the actual appointment bylaw.
Okay, so if a friendly amendment could be suggested, Councillor Haggett and Councillor Need, up to $2,000, maximum total sponsorship of $2,000, correct? Very well, and I'll just turn to the clerk so she can read that recommendation over so we know exactly what we're voting on.
That South Huron Council receives the Community and Volunteer Appreciation Committee draft minutes of January 23rd, 2025, and that South Huron Council approves the recommendations of the Community and Volunteer Appreciation Committee as follows. That the rental fee of the South Huron Recreation Center be waived for the volunteer recognition event on April 23rd, 2025, hosted by West Coast Active Living, if a charity status is not obtained prior to April 23rd, 2025, and that an invitation be extended for volunteer recognition event to municipal and volunteers, committee members, and volunteer firefighters, with South Huron sponsoring the recommended $15 per attendee, up to a maximum of total sponsorship of $2,000, and that volunteer appreciation event would be promoted across all municipal communication channels.
Councillor McLeod-Haggett, Councillor Neeb, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Dietrich, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the mayor. What are we getting for $15? That don't sound like much money.
Not sure if the menu's laid out yet there, Milt. Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
My understanding, there will be appetizers served at the event, and there will be potentially a cash bar available.
Okay, there's no further discussion. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Number 9, please.
That South Huron Council received staff report BPS 02-2025, amendment to the development charges bylaw for approval, and that the bylaw be brought back for the required 3 readings.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. 9.1.2, please.
That South Huron Council received staff report BPS 03-2025, building and planning 2024, and 4th quarter activity and year-end to date for information.
And a mover, please. Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. 9.2, please.
That South Huron Council received staff report Fire 01-2025, Fire Department Q4 activity report.
And a mover. Councillor Neeb, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question. I see that structure fires are 3 for Dashwood and 3 for Exeter. Does that mean there was 3 fires?
Chief, are you able to answer that? I think you're on mute there, Chief.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. And welcome.
Yeah,
Go ahead, please.
thank you. Through you, Mayor Finch. There was 3 fires total that both stations responded to.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, have a mover and a seconder. Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you very much, Chief. Next item, 9.2.2.
That South Huron Council received staff report Fire 02-2025, Fire Service Ladder Agreement with Lucan Biddulph, and that Council approved the ladder service agreement with Lucan Biddulph, and that the bylaw be brought back for the required 3 readings.
And a mover, Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Discussion. Councillor Dietrich, go ahead, please.
Thanks to the mayor. Is this the only city or like Blue Water? They're not interested in renting it either, or is this kind of limited to can only go so much? It seems like quite a ways away. I don't know.
Chief Becker, would you be able to comment?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Finch. This is the first neighboring municipality that has approached us, but there has been some very early stage talks with some other neighbors.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Vaughn.
Yes, I just had a question about the fees. I see there's an annual fee of $2,500, and then there's a MTO recommended fee of $570 per hour, and we're looking at a minimum 4 hours. I think my memory serves me. But we're also looking at for firefighters potentially attending the event, if you will. So is that embedded in the MTO fee? It just seems like that's not an awful lot of money for what we're actually doing here.
Chief, comment?
Thank you, Mayor, through you, Mayor Finch. So the 570.50 is the current MTO rate, which will cover the apparatus and the labor. We use the 4-hour basis because that's what we pay our volunteers or firefighters when they're called out. And the truck holds 4 bodies, and it takes the 4 bodies to operate that apparatus. So that's where the numbers came into play. The annual fee will assist in the maintenance, which with that apparatus, there is extensive maintenance because it requires not only MTO safety, but a pump test plus a non-destructive ladder test on a regular basis.
Thank you. And Chief, this for speculation, how often do you anticipate that truck would be used for its specialty?
Through you, Mayor Finch. So the only neighbors that have called upon this truck in the past has been Lambton Shores. But with the new developments at the north end of Lucan, they were looking for the ability to be able to call this because mutual aid is reciprocal. So you have to be able to reciprocate what you call for. This is an actual specialty agreement where they pay for the service. So they did approach us. They are looking in the future at purchasing their own, but this is just to cover off their interim, their basis for now.
Thank you, Councillor Vaughn.
And just one other question. Our ladder truck can accommodate height of like how high? 3 stories, 2 stories, 1?
Chief?
Through you, Mayor Finch, it's a 100-foot ladder. So depending on the ability to, or having the radius to set it up, it does take a little bit of real estate to set that truck up. You have to be mindful of your collapse zones, depending on what type of a building or structure or what you're dealing with. But yeah, it can easily accommodate the 3 or 4-story buildings that we have here in the municipality.
And Chief, it would be fair to say that if the staff were called out to respond to Lucan-Biddulph or any other municipality, it would be an excellent training opportunity for them too, for themselves.
Through you, Mayor Finch, that is correct. We do train with our neighbors on this apparatus solely because if they require it, they need to know how much space we require to set that truck up. It does have outriggers and it does take space. And again, you need to have the collapse zone clear. So you can't have it right up against a building that you're working on. You actually physically need to be away from the building to get that ladder up and over top.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Finch, just random question, Jeremy. Are there like specific 4 that would be called to take the truck to Lucan-Biddulph, or is it the first 4 that arrive to the station? How is it determined?
Chief?
Through you, Mayor Finch, all of our firefighters are trained on the apparatus. However, it would be a general page because we don't know where our firefighters are, but yes, the first 4 firefighters, so 3 firefighters and 1 officer would respond with the apparatus.
And Chief, would it be fair to say if that apparatus is heading down there, some of our trucks maybe also to assist as mutual aid?
That's quite possible. But just to note in this agreement is for the actual municipality of Lucan-Biddulph only, as they do protect other municipalities in fire service agreements, but this is only for Lucan-Biddulph.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Dietrich, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the mayor. So you said this thing's limited to 3 or 4 stories. So if you have, say, 6 stories or maybe multiple buildings, is that not mandatory from the ministry? They seem to mandatory everything else that you seem to get involved with.
Chief, are there any 6 stories down in Lucan-Biddulph?
Through you, Mayor Finch, no, and there is no requirement. If you're familiar with 1 London Place, downtown London, it's probably the tallest building downtown. There's no ladder truck that London has that'll even reach probably half of that. So after that, it's the old way of hoofing it up the stairs.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. We have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, 9.3, please.
That South Huron Council received staff report ESD 01-2025, 2024 Drinking Water System Annual Compliance Report to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks for information.
A mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neebs, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carries with 7. Thank you. 9.3.2.
That South Huron Council received staff report ESD 02-2025, mandatory reporting of 2024 commercial and industrial water consumption information to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
A mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, second by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, please.
The South Huron Council received staff report BL 01-2025, 20 bylaw infractions and requests for services for information.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, 9.4.2.
Okay. That South Huron Council received staff report CAO 02-2025, Council Strategic Priorities 2024 Year-End Review be received. Oh, I guess that's twice. And that South Huron Council set a workshop to review, validate, and work plan council priorities.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Okay, item number 10. Are there any notices of motions, please?
There are none.
Thank you. Items for discussion arising from previous meetings. Are there anything to discuss at all? Yes, Ms. Masuo-Carlson, anything?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Under new. I have new business under item 12 and discussed this with Ms. Masuo-Carlson earlier. But with regards to the tariffs, as you know, with the recent announcement of American tariffs being placed on our Canadian economy, it is quite clear that these tariffs will have a significant impact on our municipal budgets in the future. I'd like to ask Council for a resolution to support both the provincial and federal governments towards a Team Canada approach to protect Canadian jobs and communities. And if there's any support from Council for such a resolution, we could ask for a staff comments and request a report from staff on any initiatives and tools being undertaken and considered and what is possible to prepare us for these tariffs. I turn to staff and then Council for discussion. Ms. Masuo-Carlson, do you have any comments on what could be done?
Through the mayor, at this point, I do believe that it was announced that there is a 30-day moratorium at this point. However, that is just for 30 days. And I just wanted to assure council that senior staff, at a management level, we've been looking and discussing a potential impact of tariffs on operations and capital projects. And we could bring back, there's a lot of uncertainty, but if there are tariffs, there will be a huge impact to our budget. And to our businesses, right? So we're looking at things internally, and I'd like the opportunity, if council supports it, to bring back a report kind of itemizing some of the discussion points that we've had or some considerations for council, just to keep in our back pocket. Who knows, we might not need it, but it's just a matter of bringing it forward for further discussion at a council level if at some point.
Yeah, thank you. And it's very unstable times right now around the world. So we need to make sure we're showing a leadership on this within our capacities. And I turn to Councillor Neeb for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Finch. No, I think it's worthwhile to investigate some opportunities, but I think we also need to be aware of how this is going to impact municipal budgets because it will impact our residents and our taxpayers. So it's important that we have a fulsome view. Again, I know you mentioned the moratorium, but I would be more than in favor of making a motion that we get a staff report back on some of those impacts.
I turn to Madam Clerk if she could prepare a recommendation, please. Sorry, Deputy, you have something?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a great idea that staff bring something back. We don't know what's going to happen in 30 days. So it'd be nice to be prepared and ready if something does. So I think I'm in favor of doing that also.
Yeah, thank you. And it's uncharted waters right now with what President Trump is doing. So we got to make sure we're ahead of the game. Councillor Oki had something.
Thank you, Mayor. At Roma, there was discussion as well about incorporating things in like procurement bylaws or buying Canadian instead of US or something when you're procuring something. So I assume that'll be part of this discussion as well. Thank you.
Any other comments at this time? Turn to Councillor Vaughn. Go ahead, please.
Yes, just for the mayor, at the beginning of your introduction to this topic, you mentioned something about supporting provincial and federal governments, and I really wasn't sure where that was going. So are we just talking about a motion now for a staff report to come back about how we can respond as opposed to?
That's correct. So
Okay.
what I was saying, we need to support both the provincial and federal governments towards a Team Canada approach to protect Canadian jobs and communities. But yeah, staff report is what we're really looking for, I'm looking for, and Councillor Neeb, if he's agreeable to that motion, we'll look for a seconder after the motion is read. Madam Clerk?
Through the chair, just to provide some procedure information. So under new business in the procedural bylaw, any items that get brought back are not actually, no direction provided. That gets put on the next agenda item for discussion. If council finds it's an urgent matter that it needed a motion to waive the rules in order to do that, that is an option. Otherwise, for process, this would just get put on to the February 18th under new business. And at that time, council could make a motion to have a staff report back.
Councillor Neeb, are you satisfied with that?
Yeah, I'd be more than in favor if it's possible to beg council's indulgence to move ahead and break the procedural bylaw just to put this on the books.
Okay, is the rest of the council in favor of doing that at this time? Councillor Vaughn, comment?
Only going to comment in terms of if the staff feel that the 2 weeks ahead of us is enough time to actually get that report ready.
Ms. Masuka.
I think we've already been talking about some of this stuff. I think we can do a preliminary report. However, it probably won't be the final because there may be more things to think about. It is something that we're constantly talking about, but we can bring something back, at least a preliminary start in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm in favor of what Councillor Neeb is proposing, that we waive that procedure.
Okay, and if I recall, we just need a majority of council to proceed with that, and I'll turn to Madam Clerk to proceed with that.
So for process as well, in order to waive procedure, it's actually 2/3 of council, not just majority. So it would be a motion to suspend the rules. And that is section. So that would be under section 8.5 of the procedural bylaw. So that was moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Vaughn, and then we would need 2/3 of council to proceed.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that part? Call the question, all in favor? And that gives us 7. Thank you. I turn to the clerk for further process.
That staff bring back a preliminary report outlining options in relation to the possible tariff war to future council meeting.
So moved, Councillor Neeb.
So moved.
And who would like to second that? Deputy Mayor, is there any discussion on that? Madam Clerk, do you have a comment?
No, sorry.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Not seeing. I'll call the question, all in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. 12.1, please.
The South Huron Council set a committee of the whole for the following, Monday, March 31st, 2025 at 4 p.m. and Monday, April 14th, 2025 at 4 p.m. if needed, and that's for the asset management levels of service discussions.
Is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Neeb, second by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Councillor Oak?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Sorry, we didn't finish 9.4.2 setting a date or giving Rebecca direction, but we can discuss that after this vote, I guess.
Okay, so we'll deal with this one now. Under 12.1, does anyone need that read again? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Vaughn, you have something? Go ahead.
I do discussion. So for March 31st and April 14th, are both of those for the asset management plan?
That is true, yes.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. And reference 9.4.2, follow up, Ms. Carlson, please.
Through the chair, I would send a doodle poll out for council for that date.
Okay, thank you. Next item, Mayor, Councillor comments and announcements. Are there any comments at this time from members of council? Not seeing any. Okay, well, I'll tell you what the mayor's been up to then. January 15th, I welcome Levi Moody and Megan Pearson to the grand opening at the Black Squirrel Tattoo Shop to South Huron. Personally, I've known Megan for around 38 years and really happy for them that she's back in the area. And at opening day there was lots of customers waiting for a tattoo. So I didn't get a tattoo, but I was offered. So if anyone wants a tattoo, I know a really good place. And January 16th, I attended the open house, I think many did, of the 20-unit affordable housing complex on Sanders Street East. As you know, this was a project that was started in the previous term of council at the county level, but supported by all levels of government, including South Huron. And I'm very proud to see it now receiving residents as of today, actually. And what was most impressive for me is that Julie Sawchuk gave her absolute stamp of approval for, as she described it, as a job well done. So that should make us all feel really good. On the 18th of January, I was invited to celebrate Jim and Joan Briggs' 60th wedding anniversary. I'm sure many of you know them as and their families have been around for years. And I know they appreciate being presented with certificate of recognition and congratulations from South Huron. On January 20th, I, along with others from council, of course, attended the Roma Conference. And I think we all know where that went. We had great delegations, and it was very beneficial that Mayors Kathy Burkhart Jessam and Mayor Doug Cook and his Deputy Mayor Dan Sageman could join us at our delegation for mental health and addictions with Minister Tibollo. It is abundantly clear that when I mentioned that we were there as a Tri-County regional team advocating for healthcare on a regional level, it certainly caught their attention, so much so that the public pleased to know that Minister Tibollo wants to have more information about what services are currently being offered and to review this as a regional initiative. So we look forward to more of that coming back. And on January 28th, I was asked by friends Antonio and Shirley Munion of Exeter to meet with two friends of theirs, Carolina and Leandro, formerly of Brazil, to congratulate on becoming Canadian citizens on that morning of the 28th of January. Mr. Curry and I met with them up here at Council Chambers, and I explained the history of what we are today in South Huron. And I was pleased to present them with pins from South Huron, Huron County, and the Canadian flag. Very nice to meet them, and it was quite clear they really appreciate being first-generation Canadians. So we're very fortunate where we live. And as you know what's going on in the south, it just emphasizes that even more so. That's what I have. Are there any other comments from members of council? Councilor McLeod-Haggett.
Thank you, Mayor Finch. Last week it was announced that the Heart Hubs are coming to London and Oxford County were two locations where they're coming to. So if this is something, Rebecca, I don't know, that we could monitor and see if there's something on county level maybe that we could push to get this such service in our area, as it is dealing with substance and mental health needs, and that is something that is significantly growing in our community.
Okay, thank you. Any comment, Ms. Carlson?
Through the mayor, I'll look into it a little bit. I know I've been in contact with Catherine Hardiman of CMHA, and so I'll see what kind of opportunities we have here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, we will go to item 14. And if you have your mics on, Ms. Carlson, please.
14.1.
Paul.
14.2, 14.3,
Paul?
14.4,
Pull.
14.5, 14.6, 14.7, 14.8,
Pull that.
14.9,
Pull.
14.10, 14.11,
Pull.
14.12,
Pull.
Pull.
14.13, 14.14, 14.15, 14.16, 14.17, 14.18, 14.19, 14.20, 14.21, and
Pull.
that's okay. And that's for 1 and 2.
Okay, so go to 14.1. Counselor Need, go ahead, please.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Finch, through the chair. Disappointing that we weren't approved for this funding, but I see that the intake's opening again on February 12th, and I'm wondering if we need to make a motion. I know there's been discussion in the past about reapplying for this. I'm wondering with our updated master plan, the draft that we received tonight, whether it would be prudent to reapply for this fund or what our next steps should be.
Ms. Masuda Carlson, comment.
Staff right now, we're looking at different grants. Because we've already tried 2 intakes of this. There is another grant announcement as well that we're reviewing as well, and we're kind of taking a look to see what we're going to apply for. The other thing is with the election right now, we're not sure if there's going to be changes at this point.
Counselor Oak.
Yeah, and I was going to bring this one up as well because it is a different grant, this one. It's not the same intake. It's a completely different one. So I just wondered if we had a different project that might be in mind for this.
Okay, thank you. Next item, 14.3, Mr. Oak.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Lisa mentioned this at Roma, Ms. Thompson, about and introduced this new strategy, and just wondering if there's any opportunities for us South Huron to look into this program.
Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. The details aren't all out yet. So once that is, then we'll take a review of it for sure.
Okay, thank you. 14.4, Counselor Need.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Finch. This is positive news. I think that we've received this funding for the second leg of this work up to Victoria Avenue. I think it's important we continue to invest in our infrastructure. I know this may be early days, but I was wondering if there's going to be a schedule of the work. I know we still have to go to RFP, but I'm wondering if there's any draft plan. There's been some questions just in the community about start date, end date, and impact. So I know it might be early, but yeah.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor, there will be a staff report coming back. We just wanted to put this out so council was aware of it as soon as possible. But yes, there will be a staff report coming back with more details.
Great, thank you. 14.5, Deputy.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to attend the OSUM conference.
Okay, anyone else interested in going? Okay, looks like you're on your own there, Jim. Wait for Madam Clerk to prepare that.
That South Huron Council authorizes the clerk to complete registration for the 2025 OSUM conference held April 30th to May 2nd of 2025 for Deputy Mayor Dietrich.
And a mover for that, please. Councillor McLeod Haggett, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor. That carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, 14.8, is at the Civic Night last year. A lot of networking with area mayors and councillors. So I'll be willing to go to that again. Just need a motion to support me in going for 2 tickets. Councillor Neeb supports that, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor, and that carries with 7. Thank you. Okay, next item, 14.9, Councillor McLeod-Haggett, I believe.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Finch, just looking if there's anyone else on council that would be interested in putting together a team for this to support, as we do support the Connection Center significantly with our MOU, and the need clearly is within our community that the funds are required.
I'll be attending as I always do. Is there anyone else wishing to attend? Who likes to walk? Councillor McLeod?
Sorry, what I'm saying attend, I mean like attend and walk and get sponsors and have a team listed on the site.
Yeah, who'd like to participate in that? Or Councillor McLeod-Haggett? Is there a seconder for that? Okay, not seeing any. Okay, thank you, but you're more than welcome to attend that event, and I would encourage you to do so. Thank you. Next item, 14.11, Councillor McLeod-Haggett and Councillor Neeb, I believe you both asked for that. Councillor Neeb, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to see with staff if this would be possible, if we were able to rent the ice. I know it can be booked, but it's important that we provide some support, because I know Rural Response for Healthy Children is a community partner in our community safety and well-being plan. So I think it's positive as long as it fits in with the schedule.
Okay, so you'll move that then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, and who'd like to second? Councillor McLeod-Haggett seconds that. I'll let the clerk prepare the recommendation.
That South Huron Council donate 2 hours of ice time at the South Huron Recreation Center to be used for the Rural Response for Healthy Children fundraising event for March 14th, 2025.
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor, and that carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, 14.12, Councillor Neeb, I believe. So you were Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Both of you? Okay, sorry. I thought just Councillor Neeb. Go ahead. Whoever.
Thank you through the chair. And this is, I guess, kind of a two-part question. I know that the Lions Club are also involved in this event, and that they're also using the facility for the breakfast, and they're a nonprofit group. I'm just wondering if there's a way that it could all be put under one umbrella, or whether we need to do 2 separate, like waive 2 separate fees if it's the same event.
Councillor McLeod-Haggett, you have a comment?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Finch. I was actually talking with one of the members of the Lions Club today, and even though that it is the West Coast Active Living event, the Lions Club are coming in to do the breakfast. So if we could support that they get the use of the facility at no charge, that would be great.
Yeah, I think what you're asking is if they can be on the same umbrella as the Lions, because the Lions are actually a not-for-profit. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. And that was mainly just a question. I'm fine with whatever we do. I just wanted to bring that up, because again, you know, if we did say we do have a bylaw specifying which groups are eligible to have the fees waived. So I'm just thinking if they're running similar event on the same day, that maybe there's potential there for a partnership, but I'm okay making the motion that we waive the fee. I think it's important that we support this. This is a continuation, I think, of Winterfest, which I think you founded, Mayor Finch. So
actually, that's correct. Yeah,
Yep.
and when we founded that in 2009, it was a slow start to get it going. Tim Cumming, credit to him too for helping out in the communications part of it from the ABCA. But as we started moving forward with it, we did use the Lions as the non-for-profit. So they actually, if I remember correctly, they had rented the facility, and then everybody kind of joined in, and it was consensual to the Lions that they were agreeing to have that being used for that. So it worked out very well. Yeah. Yeah, that was over 10 years. I think 10 years I ran that. Yeah. Councillor Neeb, go ahead.
Yep. So I'm okay with moving forward with making a motion that we waive the fee for the Family Day event for West Coast Active Living.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, are you ready for that? Do you want to read that? And No, second.
That South Huron Council waive the South Huron Recreation Center banquet hall and kitchen rental fees to be used for the Family Day event on February 17th, 2025.
So moved, Counselor Need,
So moved.
and seconded by Counselor McLeod Haggett. Is there any discussion on that? Not seeing it, call the question, all in favor, and that carries with 7. Thank you. Next item would be 14.21. Yep. Counselor McLeod Haggett.
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch, I would be asking that council approve a letter going in support of this, as I do deal with the Children's Aid Society through my full-time job, and the funding is very short on what they receive. So if we could support this, that would be great.
Turn to Madam Clerk for recommendation, please.
So for clarification, you're just looking to support the resolutions on the table. Yeah, okay. So that South Huron Council support the resolutions of the Township of Brunel, Lyndoch, and Raglan, as well as the City of Woodstock. And that the original documentation as well as supporting resolution would be circulated as outlined in those letters.
So move, Counselor McLeod Haggett. Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor, and that carries with 7. Thank you. I believe that's it. Recommendation.
That South Huron Council received communication items not otherwise dealt with.
And a mover, please. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Counselor Dietrich. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor, and that carries with 7. Thank you. And we're going to go have the recommendation for going to closed session. We'll take a quick comfort break and then go from there.
That South Huron Council proceeds in closed session at 8:16 p.m. for the purpose, did you want to take a comfort
go
break
ahead.
before? Okay.
Yeah.
That South Huron Council proceeds in closed session at 8:17 p.m. for the purpose of addressing the following in accordance with subsection 239(2)(c) and E and F of the Municipal Act. Number 1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and that the following people remain in attendance. For item 1, CAO, Clerk, Director of Building Planning Services, CBO, and Municipal Solicitor Ed Velboom. And for item 2, the CAO and the clerk.
A mover, please. Moved by Councilor McLeod Haggett, second by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor, and that carries with 7. And if you need to take a comfort break, right now is the time to do it very quickly. And then we'll have staff move us into a closed session here. But very quickly, if you are. And we are now reporting from closed session. Council met in closed session to consider matters. It is permitted to do so under the Municipal Act and as listed on today's council. The following items were considered during the closed session. Number one, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And number two, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. As a result of our closed session today, the closed meeting minutes of November 19th, 2024 have been approved, and council extended past curfew during that session, and the following will be considered by council in open session. Item number one, that the recommendations contained in confidential item 3.1.1 be adopted, and instruction is given to the municipal solicitor and the CAO to negotiate and prepare minutes of settlement. I'd like a mover, please. Moved by Councillor McLeod-Haggett, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. The next item, number 2, that councils receive staff report CAO 03-2025, and that staff proceed with option number 2 in staff report CAO 03-2025 as discussed in closed session. Is there a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Oak, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. That is our reporting from closed session. We move on to item 17.1. Ms. Masuo-Carlson, please.
That South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 7/2025, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 48/2024 to provide for collection of actual costs for construction of the Brockhearn Municipal Drain 2024.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Dietrich, second by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. 17.2, Mr. Neeb will be excused during this time. Ms. Masuo-Carlson.
The South Huron Council gives first, second, and third final reading to bylaw 8/2025, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 13/2024 to provide for collection of actual costs for the construction of the Ford Municipal Drain 2024.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Dietrich, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 6. Thank you. And Councillor Neeb, if you can hear me. Thank you. And item 17.3, please.
The South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 9/2025, being a bylaw to provide for interim tax levies for the year 2025.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, please.
The South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 10/2025, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a license agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of South Huron and Eric Roy Campbell and Elizabeth Elaine Campbell.
And a mover, please. Councillor Oak, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Next item, 17.5.
But South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 11/2025, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 52/2022 to appoint municipal law enforcement officers and property standards officers for the municipality of South Huron.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Councillor Dietrich, go ahead, please.
Thanks to the mayor. Is this the same company that we've had before with just 2 different people?
Thank you, staff.
Through the mayor, yes, it is the same company we've had. And it's just, we've got a new enforcement officer. They've
Okay.
hired a new person.
I noticed by the report, there seem to be a lot of complaints. How come everybody's complaining about everything?
That's society today, I guess. That's just the way it works.
Where do these people come work out of? The bylaw officer?
I think they're in the London or Lucan area. Lucan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. 17.6.
The South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 12/2025, being a bylaw to adopt a private cemetery support framework.
And a mover, Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Any discussion? Councillor Neeb.
Just more of a thank you to staff for putting this together and I'm not sure if we've received any other requests from private cemeteries since that time, but I think this will be good to have a process and a policy in place. So thank you to, I think, Alex
And Kendra.
and Kendra and Ken, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. All right, so we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Next one, confirmed bylaw.
That South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 13, 2025, being a bylaw to confirm matters addressed at the February 3rd, 2025 council meeting.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor McLeod Haggett, seconded by Councillor Dietrich. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7 and 19.
That South Huron Council hereby adjourn at 9:11 PM to meet again on February 18th, 2025 at 6 PM or at the call of the chair.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Neeb. No discussion. Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for attending this evening.